In this installment, I'd like to talk about how too much purposefulness isn't a good thing, and particularly when it comes to mental health, how too much purposefulness causes us suffering and to have a really bad time. This isn't an easy idea to air, because our society is so sold on the idea that purposefulness is great, and that if there's any problem it's because there isn't enough purposefulness, or because we haven't optimized our purposeful enough, so that we're being purposeful but not in a good enough way. We're missing the mark. So if we can hone our purposefulness till it's really, really sharp, then everything would be great. Then everything would be fantastic. And it's no exaggeration to say this is absolutely what our society is based on, this notion, this assumption. All of our thinking goes that way. So this isn't good in general life, and it's even worse in the field of mental health. And yet in the field of mental health, if anything, it's even harder to get the idea across. The why we should believe something just because our society does, or just because our culture does, or because everyone around us does, is another matter. That's not really a good basis for proceeding in life. It's kind of like majority rule, so the majority believe this, so I'll go along with that. And majority rules trumps everything, because no matter what you might think, the suffocating weight of the majority will win. It's too overwhelming a force, it seems. So the key idea that I want to look at is the idea that purposefulness, the overvaluing of purposefulness and thinking that it is a great thing that will save us in every eventuality, is a delusion, a total and utter delusion. And the thing is, the point isn't that it's wrong to believe in delusions, or that we're culpable or anything like that. It's a very pragmatic kind of an issue, really. When we act on a delusion, there's inevitably a rebound or a backlash. The very fact that the delusion is a delusion means that there has to be a backlash. If the delusion wasn't a delusion, then everything would be okay. So in mental health, what the backlash means is that we act so as to benefit ourselves, or secure well-being or happiness for ourselves, and that's our movement, that's the thing that we do. We act so as to bring that about. And the backlash is simply that we get the opposite back in our face. And there can be a time lag. It could be straight away, or nearly straight away. It could be nearly instantaneous, or it could be a good while. And there's a number of factors that govern how quickly the backlash comes along, I'd say. And as soon as we put it like this, we can see that this is very practically, pragmatically relevant to us. Because what do we all want? We all want more well-being, less suffering. We want more of a sense of meaning and fulfillment in our lives, or more happiness. So, or just maybe just a tiny bit of happiness, maybe some happiness if there wasn't any before. Doesn't seem like too much to ask for. So that's fine. But because we believe that purposefulness is the man for the job, because we buy into that particular societally approved delusion, we get the backlash. So that isn't good. By definition, we don't like backlashes. I wouldn't be acting so as to improve my well-being or feel better if I wanted to have less well-being or to feel worse. That's kind of pretty obvious, I guess. The only reason I'm doing the thing that I'm doing is because I want to benefit myself. So that means when the backlash comes, automatically we know that it's the very unwanted thing, it's the thing I want least. And because my own well-being is the thing that I'm most invested in, most keen to optimize, that means I put the most effort into that, acquiring the advantage for myself in that way. And that means that the intensity of the backlash, how hard it hurts, is correspondingly very high. So we can get to a point where my intensity, the intensity of my need to find relief or cessation of suffering is so very intense that it becomes extremely violent. What we're talking about is really, really violent reactions. And then that violence is reflected right back at me with the associated time lag. So I strike out viciously because I'm in so much pain. This isn't the same a bad person for striking out viciously. It's what we automatically do when we're in pain. We strike out in some way or other. Sometimes we strike out at another person. Sometimes we strike out at ourselves. We want to have a target and smack that target. So then we have this situation where I'm in great suffering and I strike out. And that blow, if you could imagine me letting fly with a big blow, I'm just really trying to smack someone, or smack something. And my fist comes right back to me with that force, and it's myself that I am hurting the violence. So this is an extreme example of the backlash. And we might object, well, to say something like, well, that doesn't happen very often, does it? How often do I go around caught up in that kind of extreme counterproductive situation? But the point about extreme situations is they make it very, very clear. And this situation corresponds to rage when we look at things in a kind of Buddhist framework. That is the most intense of all hell states. So in Tibetan Buddhism, the most painful hell state, and none of them are barrel of laughs. Even the not so bad hell states, they're all unbelievably atrocious in terms of suffering. But the hell state is the worst. And in the hell state, as Chogyam Trungpa explains, we're lashing out, and then the rebound causes us pain, and this makes us angry because we imagine an enemy and we lash out even more, and so the pain's even more, so we get even angrier. So it's easy to see how this could escalate to be a pain state, a hell state. It just keeps on going up and up. And I don't see that the enemy is in fact myself. I don't see that it's me doing it. And the more I lash out, the less insight I have. I'm all into the lashing out, I'm not into the insight. When we react, we just react. That's the opposite of insight. It's the opposite of being reflective. So we can say that the hell state is a very, very unreflective state, or that the rage state is a very, very unreflective state. Rage is super unreflective. Just try having a chat with someone who's absolutely full of rage. You know they're not that reflective, really. It's pretty hard to get them to be reflective. And yet it's the reflectiveness that helps us, not the force of our lashing out. We kind of imagine that what's going to save me is to lash out ever harder, to really, really, really lash out, to really let fly. So it didn't work before because I wasn't trying hard enough. I didn't put enough determination in it. So the more determined we are, the more force we put into it, the more effective we get, the worse it is for us. So that's one way in which we can readily see that purposefulness isn't the right man for the job at all in this situation. And also we can see that the belief in purposefulness is a pain-producing delusion. Now it is true that most of us don't go around in a hell state or a rage state most of the time, thankfully. But this same principle of the backlash due to too much purposeful behaviour, too much emphasis on purposefulness, can be seen in lots and lots of ways. And once we get an eye for it and we kind of get the gist of the idea, then we can see it in lots and lots of places, lots and lots of situations. So in neurosis, generally, this whole big field of neurosis, it's all about one thing really. So it might seem like we need loads of fancy theories and whatever to make sense of it, but we don't. What we need to understand is how purposefulness causes a backlash, particularly when we're dealing with our own emotions or how we feel, or dealing with our own insecurity. In every single case of neurotic suffering, it's because we are deliberately trying to act for our benefit and causing us a corresponding amount of suffering as a result. And the big problem here is that the more we get caught up in lashing out or reacting or trying to control, the less insightful we get. Because absolutely all of our attention, our energy, goes into reacting, doing, being purposeful, and correspondingly less and less goes into actual insight. And in practice, of course, zero of our attention goes into insight. We just become reaction machines, which is, of course, what we were talking about with the anger. In the case of rage, I'm a reaction machine. All I know is how to react, and the fact that the reaction is making things worse is no good, because all I can do is react. All I can do is keep on upping the ante the whole time. So to be a reaction machine isn't the best idea ever, really. And yet in neurosis, that's exactly what happens. Everything goes into reactive, nothing into being reactive or being controlling, or to trying to get what we want. And none at all goes into being reflective, which is, if we were more reflective, we'd gain insight. So neurosis is a realm of no insight. So that helps us to understand how, when we're given to understand that there's things that we can do to help ourselves when we're in the neurotic realm, in the world of neurosis. And well-intentioned people come and they say, do the thing, here's a thing for you to do. And everyone got different things, of course. Some people will say this is a thing, other people will say no, this is the thing. And so there's all these people, but what they all have in common is that they're all saying do the thing. It doesn't matter at all what the thing is. The details are absolutely, supremely irrelevant. What's relevant is the fact that I'm trying to act so as to secure an advantage for myself, or to benefit myself, or to decrease my suffering, or to increase my freedom. That's what I'm aiming at. And because it's a thing that I have to do, it's a purposeful thing. So across the board, whenever I have to do the thing, we're putting all our money on purposefulness. Every last penny we've got, it's all going on purposefulness. And then we quickly run out of money, and so we borrow it off the neighbours and our relatives, and we take out a bank loan. So we've got a big stash of money, and we put it all on purposefulness. So that's the invisible irony of neuroticism. Not only is insight lacking in the world of neuroticism, which is what makes it into neuroticism, insight is also lacking in the world that seeks to cure neurosis by purposefulness. Which isn't great, really. So I myself, as a sufferer, am suffering from lack of insight, and the world of healthcare professionals, not all healthcare professionals, but this is what we could say is all healthcare professionals that are fitting in with the current of our rational, purposeful culture, and that's most of them, because it's hard not to fit in with the current of our rational, purposeful culture. We don't get anywhere. We're sidelined and marginalised. We're only taken seriously if we fit in with the predominant current, which is like a fashion, really. If we wear what everyone else is wearing, then we'll be taken seriously. The fact that it's nothing more than a dumb fashion is irrelevant, really. So here is the irony. Here I am suffering from a lack of insight, and I'm being helped by people who have an exact similar lack of insight. So it's the blind leading the blind, really. Our money is on the doing, and philosophically that's the same as saying that we're a positive culture. Think positively, act positively, be positive. Positive psychology is a thing you hear about a lot, all that kind of stuff. So the other side of the coin, which we don't hear so much about, is negative psychology and negative therapy in general. And we can explain that very, very easily by saying positive therapy is about doing the thing. And the assumption is if we're doing the right thing, then it'll benefit us, obviously. It's so obvious I probably shouldn't be wasting time stating it, but that's what it's based on. Negative psychotherapy would be not about the doing, because the doing is a problem. It's not really isn't about the doing. It really, really is not about the doing, no matter what type of doing it is. It's all equally harm-producing, pain-producing. It rebounds just as bad. So the rebound principle, just to repeat what I said a little bit ago, doesn't care what type of doing I do. It's going to rebound anyway, no matter what type of doing it is. All it responds to is the intensity that I put into the doing, or the purposefulness. The more intensity I put in it, the more I believe in it, the more money I put on it, the bigger the backlash, the more it's going to hurt me. So straight away, we don't even have to worry about looking into this type of therapy and that type of therapy, or this approach and the other approach, and the so-called 10-step this method and that method, and all these things that people have and write books about and copyright. If it's purposefulness, we know what it does. So it's not about doing the thing, it's about not doing it. How hard is that? I mean, it is really, really hard. Much harder not to do the thing. It's easy to do the thing because every little fibre of our being itches to do it, because that's where we believe our relief or escape from pain is going to come. We really, really want to do. It's not even that we do the thing. This huge reflex takes over and we buy into the reflex. So it's a mechanical reaction, and we're buying into that mechanical reaction as if being mechanical can help us from the pain that is inevitably engendered by being mechanical. So whenever we're caught up in this mechanicalness, we can see that not being mechanical, not doing the thing, is really, really hard. That's where the work really lies. We always think doing is great, and the people that are really, really able to do stuff, whatever the stuff might be, the heroes that we should emulate. And of course it's a lot more visible. Doing is a lot more visible than not doing. Sure, if there's a fellow over there not doing, how am I going to know? It's not a dramatic thing. It's not a thing that we can compete with against other people. It's not a thing that shows up at all. It's kind of like what Jung calls invisible heroism, which isn't to say that visible heroism is no good. Sometimes it's great, but just that there's a lot more invisible heroism going on, and we don't see it and we don't value it so much. So every time someone doesn't do something that they were almost inevitably going to, then that is a heroic. It's a heroic thing. We can't really say it's a heroic action because it isn't an action, it's a non-action. And it turns out that not doing is way more subtle a thing than we could ever have imagined. Because one thing that we all do if we are caught in neurotic conflict, we try not to do the thing that the impulse is trying to make us do. But if it was that easy, we'd stop. I'd stop myself thinking anxious thoughts. I'd stop myself enacting obsessive rituals or routines. I'd stop myself lashing out angrily. I'd just see that the doing the thing is bad, and I'd not do it. But we can't do this. Nobody who's ever suffered anxiety can deliberately not think the anxious thought. Nobody can deliberately not think a thought anyway, because trying to deliberately not think a thought feeds into that thought and makes it stronger. So that's the way of aggression. Aggression doesn't work because aggression is doing. So in essence, even if we do learn about not doing, and on a certain level, it's obvious that we'd be better off not doing. If I'm an anorexic, I'm better off not restricting my diet. I can see that. If I'm a heroin addict, I'm better off not phoning your man and getting a 10 bag. I can see that. That's not such a subtle point to make. But it turns out that just seeing this on its own isn't enough, because when we see that doing the thing is what's causing me the pain, then we try to do a not doing. We try to deliberately not do it or purposefully not do it. And that's the same thing again. I've just reversed it. So trying very hard not to do the thing that we do puts energy into that thing. And it may be the case that I can not do it for a while, maybe a long time, but I'm stalled. I'm in a kind of stalemate situation because I've put a lot of energy into that. And now I have to sit there and hold it back the whole time. And one of these days I'm going to lose energy and it's going to swing back even harder. So fighting against mechanical impulse is not good. I can hold it down or prevent it from doing what it normally does for a while, but it's not getting me anywhere. I just given myself a new job of purposefully stopping what before I was purposefully doing. So I'm getting caught up in a loop. So not doing is far more subtle. It's far more subtle. And we have to go into it a hell of a lot more than just to say that, but that is a good neat way of summing up negative therapy is to say that we realise that it's not in the doing. That's not where our freedom lies. Our freedom lies in the not doing. Okay, thanks for watching.